So I was thinking about why do I want to share my story? Well, I want to sing about the goodness of God, but I also want to share that everybody's got a story, and no matter how kind of ordinary it might be, somebody else might benefit from hearing by saying, hey, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm part of CMA, Christian Motorcycle Association, have been for about 19 years. But I'm not speaking, I'm not an authorized speaker on the behalf of CMA, so I'm just kind of giving my testimony and talking about a few things. So there's one caveat.
Do you know what CMA stands for?
Yeah, so CMA is Christian Motorcyclist Association. I'm a member, Kenny's a member, Karen's a member, and a bunch of other guys. It's an international organization, about 500 guys in Canada, about 5,000 in the US, about 100,000 worldwide. So this little story is kind of about me, but it's hopefully it can relate to you guys. And sometimes when you tell a story, it makes you understand your own story. It's kind of like when you sing the blues. It kind of makes you feel better. But so one thing we learned a lot of things through being involved with Christian Motorcycle Association. But one thing that they taught us was you got to be yourself. I got friends that were one percenters and so they got that story, but I never was. I was just a guy that had a motorcycle when I was a young guy, and then I was able to buy another one 30 years later. But in the meantime, I had a mortgage and a couple of kids and things like lots of people have. So, but that's, the one percenters of the motorcycle world, why they call them one percenters? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons, but generally they are just 1%. So 99% are kind of ordinary guys like me. So maybe some of those guys can relate to me. So if you were to Google ordinary working Canadian guy, it'd come up, it would be my picture. So my story is not as, so I told Carson that I was going to title this talk, Why I'm Not Carson Cole. But Carson has a very flamboyant testimony, and my buddy Billy Dolick was involved in the one percenter world, and he had a pretty amazing flamboyant testimony, even wrote a book about it. Ray and Margot had pretty wild time in the past, and Margot wrote a book about her story. I think if I wrote a book, nobody would buy it. But so these stories, Carson's story and Billy's story and Ray and Margot's story, they're maybe more flamboyant than mine. But sin is still sin, and even if your sin's not that flamboyant, it's still sin. So I'm not less sinful than what they are. Well, maybe a little bit less than Carson. So we all have work to do for the kingdom, no matter where you're at, no matter how low you are or how high you are. God's got something for you to do. So no matter what your struggles are, and you guys can relate to this struggle, you can help other people that are going through the same thing. and no matter what your achievements are, you know, if you're an Olympic diving champion, you can help other people learn how to be a better diver, you know, or no matter what your interests are, you can use that to share with people, and even what your passions are. So out of the 8 billion people that live on the planet, there's probably a bunch of people that are kind of like me. So what I've experienced, they've experienced similar things and can relate to that. So I was thinking about these verses in 1 Corinthians 12 verses, starting at verse 12. For just as the body has many members, you know what, I got to change my glasses. I'm not sure it'll make me a better reader, but just as the body has many members, and all the members are of one body, though many are one body, so it is with Christ. For in this one Spirit we're all baptized into one body, Jews and Greeks and slaves and free, and we are all made to drink of one Spirit. Indeed, the body does not consist of one member, but many. If a foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. And if an ear would say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God arranged the members of the body, each one of them as He chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many members, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, if I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the members of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable, and those members of the body that we think are less honorable, we clothe with greater honor, and our less respectable members are treated with greater respect, whereas our more respectable members do not need this. But God has so arranged the body, giving the greater honor to the inferior members, that there may be no dissension within the body, but the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together with it. If one member is honored, all rejoice together with it. So we're all part of one body. We are different, but every story can resonate with somebody. So here's my story. I was born as a very young baby, age 0, and I was smart enough to be my mom's first baby, born Mother's Day 1953. And so I've been kind of special ever since. To my mom anyway. The first 50 years and 5 days of my life, where I lived within about 100 kilometers of where I was born. So I didn't move around that much. I mean, I moved around a fair bit within that 100 kilometers, but I just lived in that small area. When I was 7, my mom and dad bought a meat market in St. Mary's, Ontario. My dad was a butcher. And I was saying to the guys this afternoon that, you know, when I was a kid, I thought, well, it'd be really cool if my dad was a doctor or a lawyer. And it never struck me till later in life, now that I'm a carpenter. It's kind of an asset having a dad who was a butcher, because if somebody doesn't really like my work and if they say, well, Jim, it's kind of rough, I can say, well, that's the best I can do. My dad was a butcher. So going to school, I wasn't a great student, and I don't want to hear anybody say no guff. But I repeated grade 4 and then grade 9 again. I was the oldest, and I had a brother and 3 sisters. My parents were quite involved in a Pentecostal church plant. I never thought of calling it a church plant, but that's kind of what it was. And all us kids attended. It seemed kind of boring, but afterwards hanging out with our buddies was quite a bit of fun. I remember being in Sunday school as a little guy. I don't know exactly how old, but Mrs. Brooks, the teacher, asked if anybody would like to pray to accept Jesus into their heart, and I remember doing that, and I think from that point on I had some awareness of God, and so I'm not exactly sure all that I knew, but I sat in church a lot, and it caused me to, it gave me some knowledge. I remember my brother and I shared a bedroom like lots of families, and I remember I would always remind him to say his prayers. I'm not sure if he did or not, but I had a pretty happy childhood growing up in a little town in southern Ontario. In the summers we would fool around down at the creek and the river and build rafts, and we would be gone all day, and it was really a lot of fun. And then also some of those summers, well, just about every summer, I would go visit a friend who lived on a farm, and they had a Honda 65, and we would rip up and down the back roads, and probably from about age 12 on, so we weren't really concerned about licenses and all that stuff. But I think that's where I started my love of motorcycles, and from that point on I kind of dreamed of having my own motorcycle. So my parents had this grocery store meat market, so we always had a job, so we were making a little bit of money, and I saved up enough money when I was about 15, and I bought an old single-cylinder matchless motorcycle, and it would be a real collector's item today. And I took it home, and I tried to get it started, worked on it, ordered some parts, and put some new parts on it, and I never really did get it going. But me and a buddy he was trying to help me get it going too, so we'd take it out on the street, push it up and down. I mean, it was like great exercise, pushing a motorcycle, trying to get it started. And every once in a while, we would get a really loud backfire. And so that was as far as it went, and then I eventually sold it. And then I bought a 250 Suzuki. When I was about 16, I got my car license and my motorcycle license, and I rode that Suzuki all over the place. It was a pretty nice bike, but the transmission was a little sensitive, so it would if you were shifting between first and second, it would sometimes jam and lock up the back wheel, and so when I was riding it around in London, where there was buses behind you sometimes, I realized that even with a locked up back wheel, if there's a bus behind you, if you jump off, you can still push it. It was a little hard on the tires, but July 20th, 1970, I went for a ride on my motorcycle, and went out to this little village about 10 kilometers from my hometown, and there was a thing they called the Kirkton Garden Party, and it was kind of a variety show, but the old people really liked it, and they had singers and comedians and stuff, but the kids weren't really that interested, but the kids were interested in going there and hanging out and pretending that they weren't interested, and hanging out with the other kids. And I knew a lot of these kids because that was part of our high school district. There had been a girl that I'd noticed at high school, but it kind of surprised me. She came over to me and asked me for a ride on my motorcycle. And so we went for a little ride, and then we came back and we sat down by the little pond and talked, and she got tired of listening to me, so she leaned over and kissed me. So Brenda was not the first girl I'd kissed, but with that kiss I was hooked for the next 30 years. 2 years later, she was graduating from high school and going off to college, and I was just still in grade 11. So even though she was a couple of years younger than me, I was taking the course of least resistance. So I kind of figured, well, if my girlfriend's going to college, maybe it's time for me to cut my losses. So I quit high school and got a job. And I'd already been doing some drywall work in the summer, so I got a job doing some drywall work. Brenda got an apartment with some other girls in London, and she went to the community college there. And I lived at home for a while, and then I got a place in London with a buddy of mine. And by this time I had a 1967 Triumph Bonneville, which I was pretty proud of. And I remember I used to stay a little bit late visiting Brenda, and I didn't want to wake her parents up. So, and it had what we called megaphones on it. So I would go outside and I would push the bike about a block down the road. And being a creature of habit, I always pushed it down about the same distance, which put me right in front of the same guy's house every time. So one day he came out and he saw me, he said, quit starting your bike in front of my house. So I did. I moved it someplace else. But my buddy had, I think it was a 1967 BSA Thunderbolt, and it was pretty noisy too. But so we were pretty cool cats. Brenda graduated and got a job, and she thought maybe we should get married, like lots of other people in our peer group were doing. I thought we should just live together, but in October 18th, 1974, we got married. We rented an apartment in St. Mary's. I think Brenda was kind of disappointed that I think she thought that when we got married, I'd become kind of like a super husband kind of guy, and I was still kind of the same old guy, which wasn't terrible. It just, she maybe just had unrealistic expectations. But can you guys hear me okay? Oh, yeah. Time carried on. A couple years later, I was sitting in our apartment. I don't know why I was there by myself. Brenda and I were usually together. But for some reason, I was sitting in my apartment and I turned on the TV. I guess I turned on the TV. And somehow I flipped around to the cable TV channel, And back in the day, now most of you guys are too young to remember that, but every little town that had a cable system would have its own little local TV station, and they would have bingo on it and different amateur type shows. And you know, I don't know if you remember that movie Wayne's World with Wayne and Garth. Well, they were on a cable TV channel, a local channel, and they had their own TV program. But so it just so happened that when I turned it on, there was a guy on there preaching, and he was going through some of the stuff that was kind of popular at that time in Christian circles. It was stuff from Campus Crusade, which I don't know if you know about Campus Crusade, but they're kind of an organization that does outreach to universities and colleges. And he was going through this, and it seemed really basic and simple, and nothing extra included. And that it was clearer than I had ever understood it before. So when I heard him say that to be saved, you just need to put your trust, believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and believe that He died on a cross and paid the penalties for your sins, and you just needed to trust in that. Just say yes to Jesus. And so I kneeled down there all by myself in my living room at my couch, and I surrendered my life to Christ. I didn't really feel really emotional. I didn't hear angels sing, but I did feel a real sense of peace, that something had been settled. And when Brenda came home, I told her what I had done, and I think she thought I had kind of flipped out, and she was concerned that I might become a missionary in Africa or something, I think, but that didn't happen. But as it turned out, the preacher that was on TV, he actually lived in the apartment right above us, and he really slammed the lid on the toilet hard. We can hear that. So I ran into him in the hall one day, and I told him what had happened and that I trusted Christ. And we started to get together and get to know each other, and he started mentoring me and helping me learn scripture verses and discipled me. Brenda would and then I started going to his church, and it was all not very far away. So I started going to his church. Brenda would join me sometimes, and got to know some of the people. A couple of years later, we had a little baby girl. When she was old enough, I would take her with me to church, to Sunday school, and Brenda was happy to stay home by herself on Sunday morning. She was the baby of her family, almost like an only child, because the nearest sibling was 7 years older than her. So she got to spend, when she was a kid, she got to spend lots of time in her room reading books, and she really liked to do that. So she didn't get as much of it after she married me, but she liked to stay at home and relax and read books. So Sunday morning, when I took Maggie off to Sunday school, that gave her a time to have some time to herself, and she quite enjoyed that. I continued to pray for Brenda's salvation, and we got along pretty well. In 1982, Brenda's mom broke her arm, and we found out that she had cancer. It was pretty advanced, that's why her arm broke. And she passed away shortly after that, and I think she was only about 64. She wasn't very old. Brenda took it really hard. Only about a year later, we found out that my mom had cancer. And on November 9th, 1983, my mom died. I think that was the tipping point for Brenda, and she decided to put her faith in Jesus. I think her whole world was crumbling, and she needed something to hold on to. So that caused her to reach out to Jesus. She told me about it one night, and I was pretty thrilled, as you can imagine. So then she started attending church with me, and life kind of carried on. When my daughter Maggie was about 3, she started going around telling people that she was going to have a baby brother. And I don't know where she got that idea from, but sometime later, Brenda picked up on the idea. I was not keen on the idea because Brenda was a juvenile diabetic and had had quite a bit of trouble when she was pregnant with Maggie. It seemed too dangerous to me, but she talked me into it. I guess I'm kind of easy. November 11th, 1983 was the day of my mom's funeral. It was 42 years ago. And the reason that date is significant, and I couldn't believe it, was that my sister told me that Brenda told her at the funeral that she was pregnant. And July 15th of 1984, our son was born and Brenda ended up spending about a month in the hospital before he was born. So I was pretty concerned. I sure didn't want to have 2 kids and no wife, but we made it through, and it was great having 2 kids. I thought, when Brenda kind of first floated this idea, I thought, wow, like, wouldn't that be kind of like cheating on Maggie? Like, I got to share my love with another child, and I know that's a really wacky idea, but that was kind of what I thought about. But it didn't really turn out to be that way. But Simon was almost 5 years younger than Maggie, and I think she thought it was really cool for a while. But after a while, she wasn't quite as thrilled at how, when she was 10 and Simon was 5, she got really sick of him. And so Simon was about this tall and Maggie was about this tall. And he would just tease her to no end. And it was horrible to watch. But it was kind of like, how do you stop this? And she would, if he just kind of looked at her funny, she would freak out. Well, it was almost irresistible for him to tease her. Right. So we said, well, if he keeps bugging you, just whack him. And so that helped quite a bit. Maggie says that it worked out okay, kind of, but she remembers being in trouble for hurting her little brother. But I said whack him. I didn't say break his arms and legs. About 10 years after Brenda became a believer, she decided she'd like to be baptized. And when she told Maggie, so Maggie would be 13 or 14 or something, Maggie decided to get baptized as well. So we invited a bunch of friends and family to the baptism at the church that we were attending, and that was pretty eventful. We were kind of witnessing to people we knew by what we were doing. Time went by, and Brenda and I were quite involved with the church. We were hosting Bible studies at our house, and we were fairly involved. In 2001, I had heard about this evangelistic video series called Alpha, and I only kind of heard a little rumor about it, but it sounded really good, so I checked into it, and I was able to borrow some of VHS tapes, and so we decided we were going to do an Alpha at our house. So we told some people at the church we were attending, and one couple decided they wanted to get involved too, and they had a friend that they wanted to bring in. I can't remember if he was a believer at the time or not, but he was this really big, tall Chinese guy, which was kind of unusual. But so we got it going, and so in the fall of 2001, we had a bunch of people over, and we served like you're supposed to do an Alpha. We served a meal and played the videos, and then we would talk about them afterwards, and it seemed to go pretty good. And then that fall, Brenda started getting hiccups, and we thought, well, how come you're getting hiccups? But it turned out that she had a growth on her esophagus. She went and got a scope, and then in December 31st, 2001, we went to see the surgeon. He said it's cancer, and you got a 10% chance of making it to 5 years if you do everything I say. So, well, I think we were pretty stunned, and we thought, well, worst case scenario, we got a couple years. So we did what they said, and she had the operation, and the operation went well, but then she got a hospital infection, and she died 4 months later. She was 46. I was stunned, but took comfort in the fact that she had trusted Jesus, and she was in the arms of Jesus. Took some comfort. I was pretty hurt. I wasn't really ready to let go of my 46-year-old wife, but it wasn't my choice. I tried to make a home for my kids, and my daughter was living at her own place by then. She was in her early 20s. My son was 17. Well, he was 17 when, 16, almost 17 when Brenda died, and a year later, I had kind of hung around and walked around kind of like a zombie, I think. But I tried to make a home for my kids, but whenever we got together, it was like we just made each other sad. So I thought I would like to do something else. So, but going back a little bit. So right after the funeral, and the funeral was at our home church, I'd go there on Sunday morning and sit by myself, and when the worship music started, I couldn't quit sobbing, and I thought, I don't want some kid to say, "Mom, why is that old guy sobbing in the back?" And so I thought I needed to try and find someplace else to attend. So I asked the leadership if I could have the mic for a few minutes after the main service, and they agreed. I told the congregation that I needed to go someplace else on Sunday mornings. I was not mad or disappointed with the church. I also thanked them for praying for me and for Brenda. I said, I know that some of you have prayed harder for Brenda than you maybe have prayed before. And the elders prayed, and I prayed, and we didn't get what we asked for. Even though it did not work out, the way I wanted, I was not going to quit praying. And I said, I want you guys to not give up either. Don't quit praying. Even though we didn't get what we wanted, don't give up. And I encouraged them to carry on. And said goodbye, and I looked for another church to go to on Sunday morning. So that fall after Brenda died, I thought I should do another Alpha. So a few years before that, we had lived in this little village of, I don't know, it was maybe 500 people or something. And our kids had gone to school there, and the kids had grown up, and we knew lots of people, and I was on the volunteer fire department. And just about everybody knew that Brenda had died and our situation. So I thought, well, this would be a good opportunity to invite people to an Alpha. So I made up some little cards, and I went around and stuck them in mailboxes and invited guys that I'd been on the fire department with and other friends to come to Alpha. So I found a little Lions Club hall in the park, and it wasn't very expensive to rent, and I rented it. And we served a meal and did the video and did the discussion. And so I think every Wednesday night for about 12 weeks, Maggie decided she was going to help me. Maggie and I packed up the TV and the VHS player, and we drove to Cranton, and we served a meal, and sometimes it was a casserole and sometimes it was pizza. We had about 6 or 7 people that attended pretty regularly, and the gospel was preached. Switching over to my other notes here. Don't be scared. I started putting it on 3x5 cards, but I kind of ran out of time this morning. In the spring of 2003, I think I was still kind of stunned at Brenda's death. The job that I had kind of come to an end. My daughter was living on her own, and my son was almost ready to turn 18 and planned to go to the local community college that fall. I asked him if it would be okay if I moved someplace else and started over. And that didn't bother him at all, but you know, young guys, nothing scares them. But so we got him a place to stay, student type accommodation, and instead of him going away to a college, he stayed in his hometown and went to college, and his dad moved away. I had been thinking about buying another bike, so I started looking around, and I ended up buying an 81 750 Honda for $1,500. So I rode it around a little bit, got used to it. But May 15th, 2003, when I was 50 years and 5 days old, I figured I'd leave my home turf, and somebody asked me, well, when are you coming back? I said, well, I don't think I'm coming back. I think I was looking for some comfort by visiting friends along the way. My first stop was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I had a friend there. It was actually the wife of a guy who had discipled me way back when, and they'd got a divorce, and she was living on her own. I went and visited her, and then on Sunday morning, I went with her to church, and she was attending a little Episcopal church, and that's what the Americans call Anglican, because they don't want to say Anglican because, they had that Boston Tea Party with the English. So they called it Episcopal. And there was a guest speaker there. And he was talking about John the Baptist. And you don't hear people talk about John the Baptist. So it's kind of like we don't really know what to do with John the Baptist. But I think that it was for me. And I won't, we're kind of running short of time, but I won't read you the passage. But the story is John's in prison, and he sends his followers out to ask Jesus, are you the one? And John's whole job, his whole life was to pave the way for Jesus. And he's in prison and he's thinking, well, did I make some kind of a mistake? So he sends his disciples out, and they ask Jesus, are you the one? John is asked, are you the one, or should we start looking for somebody else? And maybe I better read a little bit of that. I had a bookmark in here, but I don't have it. Yeah, I'll read this. It's not that long. When John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered them, "Go tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them." And then he goes on to say, and this was, I think this was a message for John, "Blessed is anyone who takes no offense to me." And this preacher was saying, maybe that means blessed, you can be blessed if you are not offended by how God's going to do things. Because, this didn't fit into John's plans at all. He thought he was making way for the king, a king of kings, and he was, but it turned out to be not the way he planned. And when Brenda died, I thought, God, I thought we were doing what you wanted us to do. And now you let my wife die. And I can say that you let my wife die because I believe he could have healed her if he wanted to, but for some reason he decided not to. So that kind of struck me. Well, maybe that's a word for me. Things aren't working out the way I planned, but I need to hang in there. If I want to be blessed, I need to hang in there in spite of how things are working out. So from there, I went and saw that preacher buddy that used to live above me, and he was divorced and married somebody else at that time. And he lived in North Carolina, and I visited him for a few days, and then had some friends in Atlanta, Georgia, and a friend in Tampa, Florida, and then another friend in Austin, Texas. And I was kind of looking that these people would comfort me, but it kind of seemed like several of them they were struggling themselves, and in some strange way, I think maybe I was an encouragement to them rather than them being an encouragement to me. Maybe it cuts both ways, but I was surprised that I could be an encouragement to them, and I think the encouragement was not what I said, but it was that they realized I had faced a big loss and that I was carrying on. So I think they felt like, well, maybe if Jim can carry on, maybe we can carry on. So I think the whole trip was quite therapeutic to me, and I don't know why I did it. Why do you, at age 50, why do you buy an old motorcycle and head out on a journey? But with no real destination. But so after I left Texas, I went across through New Mexico, and by the time I got close to Santa Fe, it was too hot. I didn't know that it could get too hot to ride a motorcycle, because I'd never been in the South before. But yeah, it can get too hot. You know, there is ways of dealing with it, but I was starting to get a little bit woozy, because when the air is 110, it doesn't matter if you're going 110 kilometers an hour, it's just hot air. And so I thought, I got to get out of this heat. So from Santa Fe, I headed north up into Colorado. And as soon as you start climbing up into the mountains, it cooled off, and it was pretty easy to live with. And up through Colorado, and then into Wyoming. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever been to Wyoming, and I was kind of taking the back roads. So I'm thinking, man, I don't think there's anybody who lives in Wyoming. And so one evening I pulled over, and I was in the middle of nowhere, and it was, you know, it was ranch land for miles in every direction. There was a few cows up on the hill, and I pulled over and I just kind of looked around, and I thought, well, you know, when you're in the middle of Wyoming on a motorcycle by yourself, you're really all by yourself. And so then I carried on up into Montana and into Alberta, and 3 of my siblings have lived in Alberta most of their adult life. I was telling people that I knew that I was looking for a new bride, which I was. When I liked being married, I liked having a wife, and so I thought, well, I should maybe start looking around. I first, when I first became single at age 48, almost 49, I thought, well, this was I wasn't expected, so I thought, well, I'll read a book about it. So because Brenda and I had been a couple for 30 years, so I read this book, and some of the advice, the pointers that I remember was, one of the things that the book said is, you know, you need to be realistic about what you're shooting for. You know,
write this down.
if you're a 3, it's kind of unlikely you're going to catch a 10. So, and it had a little thing in there, how to rate yourself. So, well, you know, I'm physically fit and maybe not bad looking, and you know, I've had some success in life. But then I came to education is pretty important. You know, people, you know, university graduates sometimes might turn their nose up at high school dropout. So I thought, well, I was looking at that and I was thinking, well, I'm a high school dropout, but I think I'm pretty smart. But then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought, there is a possibility that I'm just dumb enough to think that I'm smart. So I threw the book away. and I may be a 3, but I got myself a 10. Yeah. So that part wasn't even true. So I visited my brother in Calgary and stayed there for a few days. Then I went up to Edmonton, where I had been telling my 2 sisters, one in Edmonton and one in the Northwest Territories, that I was looking for a new bride. So they thought they still think they're the real matchmakers, and maybe they are. So they cooked up. My sister in Edmonton here cooked up a plan to have a meet and greet barbecue in her backyard, and this was like in July. So I knew what was going on, and Karen was invited, and we got there, and we got chit chatting, and Karen there was a guy there was talking politics and just wouldn't let it go. And so him and I had a little bit of a confrontation right there in the backyard, not physical, but I just said, hey, okay, well, that's your opinion. I just don't want to talk about it anymore. And he kept talking about it, so I had to put it in a little stronger terms. But so Karen saw that, so then I moved on from there, and I was chit-chatting to Karen, and I said, well, maybe after the barbecue, we could go for a coffee or something. And she said, well, I got my van here. We can go for a coffee, and I can give you a ride home. So this was in Bonnie Doon, and Karen was living in Fort Saskatchewan, and her son was with her, and I think he was 16 or 17. I said, well, Ronnie could drive the van home, and I'll give you a ride. So that's how quick I'm thinking. I'm really really quick on my feet, and smooth like silk. So we went out and went to Tim Hortons in Sherwood Park, and we sat and talked, so we really kind of hit it off, and so I gave her a ride home, and I didn't include this part in this afternoon's little talk, and I'm not sure if I can really say it without breaking up, but so at the time my brother was single as well, and he's 2 years younger than me, and you guys would probably, he's about this much taller, and he's bigger. He's about 50% bigger than me, or used to be anyway. And he's been a pain in my side ever since he was born. But so when I was walking Karen up to the door, I said, I thought you knew this was kind of a setup. I knew it was a setup. And she said, no, I didn't know. And then she says, well, yeah, I kind of did, but I thought it was going to be the big guy. The big guy. I mean, I haven't seen this guy is still a pain in my side. And so that was pretty hurtful, but I held back the tears, and I was able to forgive her for that. And so we carried on, and I went to my nephew's wedding in BC, and then after that I rode my motorcycle up to Hay River in Northwest Territories, and I did a bunch of carpentry work for my sister all that fall, and Karen and I corresponded back and forth through the telephone and emails, and so at Christmas time I decided to leave the territories and come back down and to Calgary and stay with my brother for a while, and then I was a little bit closer to Karen, so we visited back and forth, and in February of 2004, I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. Incredible. We got married in March 20th, 2004, so once she said yes, I didn't want her to have any chance to change her mind, so strike while the iron's hot, and at age 50, I thought, man, I'm getting old, I better, if there's anything to do, I better get it done. So we got married fairly quickly, and we started attending the church that Karen had been attending, the Alliance Church in Fort Saskatchewan, and that was where we also got married. We lived there. Karen had a house, and a little house, and I said, well, why don't we sell that and I'll build us a new house. So we did that, and it worked out really well. And but in the meantime, I had heard about Christian Motorcycle Association, and so I started snooping around, and I wasn't, really hip to the internet then, and maybe other people weren't either. But so I went and knocked on this guy's door, and I said, somebody told me that you were part of Christian Motorcycle Association. He said, no, I'm not, but I used to be, but here's a number of a guy that is. So I called this guy up, and his name was Jim, and he said, yeah, we're going to have a chapter meeting next Wednesday or whenever. So Wednesday came along, and it was cold, rainy night, and I went up from Fort Saskatchewan up into Gibbons, and they were having a meeting in a portable classroom that was on the grounds of Sturgeon Alliance Church. And I went in, and it was kind of dark, and I think it was like the room that youth was using. And I went in, there was just two guys there, and it was Ray. Ray was one, some of you guys know Ray, and this Jim guy that was a longtime member as well. And so we sat and talked, and I was going to, if Ray had been here, I wanted to say it was just Ray and Jim, but I went back the next month anyway. But so Karen and I have had lots of adventures with Christian Motorcycle Association. We've ridden 135,000 K on the bike. Mostly with Karen on the back. We've been to California a couple times and Toronto a couple times. And when you're out on the bike and you're wearing your colors, people just come up and start talking to you. It's like, it's a great opportunity to share with people. And even if you don't say anything, you're pointing to Jesus. We're flying our colors for God. And So one year we went to Sturgis. We thought, well, every biker should go to Sturgis at least once. So we rode down with some other guys, and we signed up for helping out. And how's our time? Should I be wrapping it? Got about another 15 chapters yet.
A couple guys need a smoke.
What's that?
A couple guys need a smoke for sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll wrap it up. But I was kind of concerned that I wouldn't have enough to say. But but anyway, so we went to Sturgis, and we signed up for a few things. But one of the things we signed up for was to do a nursing home visit. So we went there, and one of the local CMA, Christian Motorcycle Association guys, did a little sermon with evangelical, asked people if they would like to trust Christ, and a whole bunch of these old people put their hand up. And so Karen and I got to talk to a couple of little old ladies, and we were using these little books that Billy Graham Association puts out, Steps to Peace with God. And so we went through it and explained it to these ladies, and I said, and here's where you sign your name and date it, and if this is true and you've trusted Christ today, you can look back at this and there's your name. You know you're saved. Your name's written down, and so that was pretty exciting. And we got to talk to lots of people out on the street too, but that was kind of not what you would think people do when they go to Sturgis. But anyway, so I think what resonated with me way back when that guy was sharing the gospel on cable TV was that he made it simple. It was that material from Campus Crusade. It was very simple, straightforward. It's trusting in Jesus Christ alone, and believing that He is, and that He paid the penalty for our sins. So at age 69, I got my first tattoo, and it's a gospel presentation. So, and I'll just go through it quickly, but you know, the whole Bible is about encouraging people to move into God, to trust God, to put their faith in Him, and the Bible says that, you know, that God's not willing that any should perish, and we're saved by trusting in Jesus. So we can know that we have salvation. So the question is, if you were to die tonight, are you sure you're going to go to heaven? Heaven is a free gift. It's not earned or deserved. And here's the problem. Man is a sinner, cannot save himself. And if you don't think you're a sinner, you need to have a closer look. But that's the problem. The big finger is G for God. God is merciful, but He's also just. He can't let sin go unpunished. The ring finger is J for Jesus. Jesus was the God-man, died on the cross, paid the penalty for our sins, and purchased a place for us in heaven. And true saving faith is trusting in Jesus Christ alone, putting your full weight down on Jesus. And if anybody hasn't done that before, please talk to me tonight if you would like to. Talk to Carson. But you know, it's easy to kind of think, well, yeah, I agree with that. But you really need to put your full weight down on it like you would on a chair. Yeah, I believe that chair could support me, but you prove that you believe it when you sit down on it, when you put your full weight on it. But anyway, that's pretty much it for tonight, but thank you very much. And I was thinking that song that Carson just played, and this story has been about my life, and I would say all my life He's been faithful to me.